Our next patient is Mr. Steve Wolcott. He's really an amazing miracle of how one can survive several cancers, and he'll tell you a little bit about the syndrome that he has called the Lynch Syndrome, which is an unusual syndrome that causes cancers of many parts of the GI tract. I specifically was involved in treating his cancer of the duodenum that required a complicated procedure called the Whipple procedure. I like to think about this as the Woodall Rogers of the abdomen. So I say 75, 45, and 35 all come together right here, and we've got to take pieces of each of those to reconstruct the patient after taking out the front part of the pancreas, the duodenum, and the end part of the bile duct. This is really a very complicated procedure, and thankfully Steve will tell you about the recovery from that, from his personal perspective. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for our interview with Mr. Wolcott, who is one of my patients. Mr. Wolcott brings a tremendous perspective today because unfortunately he was diagnosed with several different kinds of cancer, one of which needed my help from an operative standpoint, but is doing great and is tumor-free at this point and is truly a miracle and a testimony to us all. Mr. Wolcott has become a dear friend over the many years, and I'm so thrilled to introduce him today. Mr. Wolcott, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks for agreeing to do this. This is really beyond what we could ask, and we're just honored to have you.
It's an honor for me.
So walk us through a little bit, Mr. Wolcott. As I recall, your first cancer diagnosis was a colon cancer, is that right?
That is correct. I was 36 at the time. This was 1987. I had a colectomy surgery.
Yes.
Which, you know, solved the problem at the time. No treatment, by the way.
Yes.
And I was at the time clinically diagnosed with Lynch Syndrome, which is a genetics malfunction, if you will.
Right, so that is a genetic-based driven cancer-forming syndrome, correct?
That's correct.
And so that was great that your doctors picked that up at that point.
Oh, it was terrific. I was later tested for sure, and it was confirmed that I had it. Briefly, my little sister had colon cancer at the ripe old age of 23.
Wow.
She preceded me by about 6 months. So she has been tested, and she also has Lynch syndrome. I have two brothers in between who are negative. Thankfully.
So they managed to skip that gene.
They skipped that gene.
Right.
They've been just fine. Well, when I was diagnosed, we knew what I was facing. I was feeling pretty positive because the oncologist told me that it was operable, but it was a very complicated surgery. And I still have, by the way, the small piece of paper, the little memo, and he wrote down, he said there were a limited number of surgeons in this area that could do this.
And we're talking about the Whipple procedure.
We're talking about the Whipple. He wrote down 4 names, and being the persistent guy that I am, I twisted his arm and asked him to circle one of the names, and he circled yours.
It's great to meet Vicki Pinney today. She's really an amazingly vibrant human being who came to me with the diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. Like one of our other patients, Vicki needed the Whipple procedure, which is this really complicated procedure that's really 3 operations in one. It's a stomach procedure, a pancreatic procedure, and a bile duct procedure. It's one of these surgeries where actually the number of cases that you do is important. So as you look at the surgeon that's going to be operating on you, you do want to find out how many the surgeon does and how many are done at the institution where you're having that operation. I would really take the time to research this, and we're here to help you in any way.